Well, good morning. Welcome to First Free. My name is Matt. Morning. If I do not know you, if you're streaming, welcome. As you can see on the screen, we've been in a series in the book of Acts, and I was supposed to be talking about Acts 7 today. In Acts 7, Stephen tells the history of Israel. He kind of retells almost the whole history of Israel with such a pointedness that he ends up stoned to death by Israel's religious leaders. And in his retelling of the story, he's implying that something new and profound has happened in their history, and they missed it. That something, actually someone, Jesus the Christ, the Messiah, shows up. But in order for them to believe in this Jesus would be a shift, quite a shift. It would mean a pivot, a profound pivot. It would mean a change to the way they understand and relate to God, and thus the way they understand and relate to everyone and everything. They weren't interested. Well, I was supposed to preach about all this from Acts 7. But yesterday, I felt something that I would name as God, or the Holy Spirit, nudging me to let that go. For now, anyways. See, today after church, we have one of our quarterly ministry community meetings. And at this meeting, the elders and I will be sharing some vision and direction of where we hope to go as a church. And in particular, what I'll be talking about is the vision I sense for our future. And it involves some change, some transition, and quite frankly, some transformation. And I'll leave that there to kind of, wet your whistle to come to the ministry community meeting. I mean, there's free lunch, well, suggested donation, but reduced price lunch, okay? But as I was sitting with this idea of change and transformation for some time, the story of Moses transitioning his leadership to Joshua kept coming to mind. And I sense that I should share with you all some of that story. So if you don't mind, I'd love to read Exodus 34 for us. Exodus 34. If you brought your Acts book, it will not be in there. Don't look for it in there, okay? It will be on the screen, and if you brought another Bible or your phone, you're welcome to pull it up. This is what it says. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There, on top of that mountain, the Lord showed him the whole land. He could see it all, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah. He could see all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. He could see the Negev and the whole region from the valley of Jericho. He could see the city of palms. He could see as far as Zoar. And then the Lord said to him, "This land, everything that you see, this is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I'll give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross over into it." Continuing in verse 5, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died. yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. They grieved until the time of weeping and mourning was over. And now Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Since then, it says, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Moses, the story of Moses, you might know, Moses is the one who ends up leading Egypt, leading Israel out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of bondage, out of liberation. And he leads God's people from Egypt into the wilderness, these 40 years of wandering. He leads them through all of that, but he doesn't get to enter the promised land on the other side of it. It says in our text, he climbed up the mountain, had a view of all of it, but he wasn't able to enter it. And see, as long as Moses was their leader, the people of God were stuck on the wrong side of the Jordan. They were stuck from entering into this promised land of milk and honey. They were stuck from receiving the gift that they were promised. They were stuck from the next season of life for their community. They were stuck. Do you ever feel stuck when it comes to faith? Like perhaps you're doing it all right. You're doing all the things you've been told to do. You're listening to all the right people you were told to listen to. But it feels like you can't go where you know you need to go next. And you feel stuck. See, certain things are only made possible in God's economy, in the way that God does things, when something is passed on or handed over or surrendered. Israel would not enter the promised land under Moses' leadership. Moses needed to let go and allow the people of God to be led by Joshua. To receive the promise of God, they needed to trust a new leader, to leave the wilderness stage. What T. Swift would call the wilderness era, to leave that. I saw at least one head look up when I said T. Swift. They were otherwise. But to leave that, they needed to follow someone new. There is healing, transformation, and blessing that is only possible when the current is willing to let go for the sake of the future. I believe that God has something beautiful and profound for you and for this community. But it will only come to fruition if we are willing to let go of who we currently are, to embrace what we can become. Why was Israel stuck, you might be wondering? Moses seemed to be quite the faithful leader. I mean, what we just read, it said there was no greater prophet in Israel than him up to that point. So why wouldn't God allow him to enter the promised land, this place he was leading people to, guiding people to. It ends up having to do with, some mistakes he ends up making. But one you can hear about comes in Numbers 13 and 14, and it's actually the mistakes of others, of these spies. So in the story of Israel, when they're in the wilderness, they put together this list of 12 spies representing their different tribes who are going to go into this promised land, into this new land that they were promised, and explore it a bit. And it says, bring back, if there's any interesting fruits, tell us, what it's like. How's the soil there? What are the people like? And come back and let us know. So they send out these 12 spies. And the spies return, and they say, you won't believe it. It really is a land of milk and honey. It is exceedingly good land. They bring back, this whole branch of a grapevine tree thing and some pomegranates and all this stuff. They're like, check out what grows there. But, they say, the cities are fortified, meaning, they've got walls and protection. And the people there are huge. It says they're like Nephilim. They're like these ancient giants. And they say, if we go there, we're going to get devoured. 10 out of the 12 say this. They say, no way. This would be the dumbest thing we could do as a community, is try to enter this promised land. We will be devoured. We will end. In fact, they'd probably take our children and our wives as plunder. We should just go back to Egypt. 10 out of the 12 felt this way. They quickly started, you know what it says they did? They started planting doubt among the whole community. And pretty soon, the whole community, it says, is discouraged. Let me read to you from Numbers 14, where they're at. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. It says, then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. The two leaders just fall on the floor. And Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, in other words, 2 of the 12 spies, they tore their clothes. And they said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he'll give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land. It says, because they will not devour us, we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. One way to look at the life of Israel is through stages of faith. You could say in Egypt, there's a stage of certainty. In other words, they know they're going to get 3 meals a day. They won't be good meals, but they know they're coming. They know what their work is to do. There's no figuring it out for themselves. We make bricks and we build pyramids. We have a calling and vocation that's clear. They know how to live in that society, how to appease the Egyptian rulers. It's familiar. And we should never forget the sheer sort of power and appeal of familiarity. The human heart craves it. And this is why over and over again, not just here in Numbers 13 and 14, but over and over again, when we read through the wilderness stories in Exodus, the people often say, can't we just go back to Egypt? Can't we just go back to the place we were oppressed? Can't we just go back to the place where we were slaves? Where there was literally physical bondage and religious bondage on them. But there was clarity and certainty. Can't we just go back? They weren't even treated as full humans there. You know, while they're there, while they're in it, they cry out to God to release them. And God listens and liberates them through Moses. This stage of certainty, you could say. But the next stage for them is wilderness. God leads them out of that place, and God meets with them in the wilderness in profound ways. He gives them the law, right? It's in the wilderness that Moses meets with God face to face and is given the 10 Commandments, amongst others. And these are less about, just a bunch of rules to follow, but they are a way to live. Moses is understanding through God, this is a way to live, to become fully human and fully following the will and covenant of God. The wilderness, though, is also exhausting. It's stretching, it's purifying, it's full of unknowns, but it's painted as a journey worth going on. And they're promised that they will inherit land to dwell on. In other words, within the wilderness is a promise that it will not be forever. And you might think that the wilderness is the scariest stage. But entering the promised land is told to us in the scriptures as something that's even more terrifying. So much so that the people say, we would have rather died in Egypt. Or, well, now we're in the second stage, the wilderness, so it would have been better that we just died here than to progress to that third stage, that new and unfamiliar place. If only we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness. They say, why is the Lord bringing us to this land? But Joshua has been to the next stage. He's been to the promised land. He saw all of the beauty and all of the terror of the promised land. He saw the fortified cities and the warriors that looked like giants. But there he is saying, look, I've seen the next stage with my own eyes, and it's worth it. He says, quote, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. It is good beyond what you currently even can imagine. It's better than what you even understand to be goodness yet. This is the Joshua who then gets called to lead Israel into that promised land. See, he's been there. Moses must let go, and the people must trust Joshua. I mean, the odds are against him. 10 out of the 12. What, I don't know, what is that? 85 something? It's a high percentage. 10 out of the 12 spies said that if you go into that land, not only, hey, it's not as good as Joshua says, you will be devoured. Your children and your wives will be taken from you. These 10 out of 12, they're the voice of fear. And they outweigh the voice of faith 10 to 12. And that's often the way it is. Most people will tell you to stay where you are, even if it's no longer working for you. Even if someone has said, no, I've seen something better. Trust me. The others will say, no. If you go there, you will be devoured. It will be over. It'd be better you stayed here or even went back to the previous stage. The voice of fear wants you not just to stay where you are, but to regress even further back into the chains of Egypt. Brian McLaren, he says this. Let me read this about stages of faith. He says, if you're ready to grow to a new stage, but your current form of Christianity keeps you from doing so, you're going to be frustrated, and rightly so. You may let your current beliefs and practices trap you so you stagnate or even regress. That sense of stagnation or stuckness may eventually drive you to leave Christianity entirely, seeking room to grow elsewhere. He says a lot of people leave Christianity when really all they needed was to leave a confining form or stage of Christianity. Some people think leaving Christianity will solve their problems, not realizing that their problems are as rooted in their stage of development as in their religion. But eventually, even though a certain form of Christianity solved the problem of one stage, it can become a problem at another, creating a stained glass ceiling that impedes further growth. So, I want to ask you to be honest with yourself. Do you ever feel stuck when it comes to faith? What if there was a more expansive way to be Christian? McLaren, he spent a good bit of time kind of exploring all the different psychologists and theologians, thinkers who have put together different stages of faith. A lot of different folks have done it. And they're really helpful to explore a lot of the different ones, to understand, like, where am I in my growth? Where am I in my development? And he kind of, synthesized and created his own. And what I want to do for the rest of our time is just explore these 4 stages that he offers. And I want to give you time to identify yourself there in as compassionate of a way as you can, not in a judgmental way, and not necessarily saying that it's not a kind of hierarchy, because in fact, what you'll see by the time we get to the 4th stage is that within that stage, you just repeat again and again anyways. And if you're feeling like, oh, I'm identifying with one of these, but I just feel all this shame, you'll just shut down and you won't engage in the exercise in any beneficial way anyways. So I encourage you to just listen as I go through these stages and see if anything resonates and see how you feel about that. You may identify yourself in one stage and be perfectly happy there. Or you may notice why you're feeling some unhappiness, some stuckness, some desire for more in your life with God. All right. Let's look at these. I made some slides, a lot of table stuff, but the 4 that he recommends says there are is simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. Okay? Simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. Saying complexity to perplexity sounds kind of nice. That would be really good, I think, in a rap song. It's kind of working those two. Anyways, simplicity. Let's talk through some of those. You can go to the next slide. This is going to be way too small for you to see, but that's okay. I will read it, okay? So he goes through kind of each of these different things happening in this stage. So let's walk through the simplicity stage, and would you be curious of your own mind, heart, soul, and see if you're here. The perception in simplicity is dualistic, right? It's very kind of yes, no, white, black, this, that. The focus in this stage is on right or wrong. Right or wrong. And if you would like these, I can send these to you, okay? Don't worry about that. The focus in the stage of simplicity is on what's right or wrong. The motive is on pleasing authority figures and being right or considered right. So what is your motive in this stage? You want to please those who are in authority over you. That's the motive, and you want to be seen as right. The key values are, well, being right, being clean, being good, obeying those authorities, staying faithful to tradition, and remaining loyal to the in-group, to whatever group you're a part of. Remaining loyal is a key value. An assumption in this stage is that everything is either known, so you already are able to know it, or it is knowable. So if you kind of work hard enough, try hard enough, you can know it. Everything is known or knowable. How does people in this stage think about authority figures? Well, they are leaders who know and teach the right answers. They're almost become godlike. How do you think about us and them in this stage? Well, like good or evil. Us and them, good, evil. You can go to the next slide. A few more on this simplicity. What's a metaphor for life in simplicity? A war. Life is a war. It's a battle. Your identity in this stage is often dependent or codependent. Belonging, what does belonging sound like in the simplicity stage? It sounds like I am part of the good, the right, and the true group. I'm part of the good, right, and true group. What do you think about God in this stage? God is a supreme being. God is an almighty protector. God is a warrior. God is the lawgiver. God is a patron. And God is a patriarch. The core question will be, what do authorities say about this? How do you think about mistakes if you're in this stage? Mistakes are kind of like legal infractions, right? You've broken a law, or they're like moral failures. Or mistakes are when you're disobedient to authorities. Or mistakes are when you're ignorant of the rules. What are the strengths? A couple strengths. Within the simplicity stage, there's usually high commitment from people. And there's usually a willingness to sacrifice, to remain in that group. You go to the next one. This is the last slide about simplicity. What are the weaknesses? Well, it could be narrow-minded. You could become judgmental. You could become combative. And you can see how the next one, which is a willingness to inflict suffering, if you're in that group. You can see how that's the flip side of the coin. If you're willing to sacrifice in a good way, you can also be willing to sacrifice harm towards others. And there can be a false certainty. Those are all weaknesses. What does the good news sound like? It sounds like wrongs can be forgiven. What is the attitude towards that present stage? So how do people in simplicity often think about their stage of simplicity? That this is the only correct and orthodox stage. So, if you're hearing all this and thinking, well, if anyone thought anything differently about any of these, you may be in simplicity. And that's okay. What is the attitude toward tradition? Well, it's faith in an authoritative tradition. It's good. What is the attitude towards doubt? Doubt is a failure, a weakness, a defection. You're defecting from the truth, a betrayal, or even sin. And faith is assent to required beliefs. Faith is assent to the required beliefs within that community. Okay, it's a lot, but just listen for the thing that hits you, and you can stay with that and even zone out to the next things I say, okay? But we're going to move on to complexity. Complexity, okay? And we'll work through this chart. This is from Brian McLaren's book. It's in two of his books. One is, I think, called Life or Faith After Doubt. And I'll tell you the other one later. But anyways, complexity. What's the perception in complexity? It is pragmatic. So if the previous stage was dualistic, there's right and wrong. Complexity is more about, it's a little more complex than just right or wrong. It's about what works. Like, what actually works in life? Pragmatic. So the focus is on success or failure. The motive is on achieving goals or being successful. The key values are being free and independent. There are things like winning, things like succeeding, things like achieving goals. The assumption in simplicity was everything is known or knowable. Here, everything is doable or possible, right? This is about pragmatic, getting something done. So authority figures are coaches who can help you succeed. That's how you view authority figures. The us versus them, instead of good versus evil, it's winners and losers. Us, them, winners, losers. Let's keep going. Next slide. In complexity, life is like not a war, that's simplicity. It's like a game or a competition. Identity, you are becoming increasingly independent. Belonging means I am part of the successful, effective, and winning team. Okay? God is an encourager and guide who can help me prosper and succeed. The core question, what are the steps to success? Like, just give me some takeaways of what I should do to have my best life now. Mistakes would be seen as a lack of commitment, lack of preparedness, a lack of effort, or a lack of a positive attitude. Okay? Some strengths that you find in this complexity stage is usually people are pretty enthusiastic. They're eager to learn. They have a lot of idealism, a lot of action, because they're thinking pragmatically. How do we get something good done? Okay, next slide of this stage, the last one of the complexity stage. Some of the weaknesses, you could be superficial if you're only concerned with outcomes. You could be naive, overly pragmatic, and have an excessive confidence, right? We can get it done if we just try hard enough. The good news sounds like this to someone in this stage. Help is available. So in the first one, it's wrongs can be forgiven. Now it's help is available. Excuse me. The attitude towards this present stage, those who are in it, kind of like, this is the most effective and exciting stage. Like, this is where it's at. This is where we get stuff done. The attitude toward tradition, as long as it's useful or helpful, tradition is great. Doubt is a problem to be solved or a sickness to be cured, because it gets in the way of getting stuff done. And faith is a means to a desired end. So that's complexity. Let's keep going. Perplexity. Wiggle your arms, wiggle your body, get with it. This might be where you're at. Let's listen. Let's keep figuring out where we are. Perplexity. Here the perception is critical or relativistic. The focus is on being honest, on being authentic, or on someone else being dishonest or inauthentic. The motive. What's the motive? Someone's like, I see through appearances to what's real. So I'm going to be honest, authentic, true to oneself. Key values. Being fair, acknowledging our biases and mistakes, facing inconvenient truths. The assumption here is everyone has an opinion. Every viewpoint is just a view from some different point. Authority figures are manipulators who control the naive and trusting. Us versus them. Remember, back to simplicity, good, evil. In complexity, winners, losers. In perplexity, you've got honest and dishonest. This is how you separate between who is one of us, who's not. Next slide. Life is, if you're in the most cynical of this group, life is a joke. If you're a little less cynical, life is a quest or a deception. Your identity is kind of being formed as counter-dependent. In other words, you're defining yourself against someone else. Belonging means I am one of the thoughtful, honest, independent individuals. God, more cynical, myth, a little less cynical, mystery. The core question is, what is the hidden agenda or bias that I need to be suspicious of? Because someone's always trying to pull something over me. So what do I need to be suspicious of in this moment? In this stage, mistakes come when we fail to question, when we fail to challenge, and when we fail to think critically. Strengths, there's usually a lot of honesty in this stage. There's usually a lot of curiosity in this stage. And there usually is a lot of critical thinking. Those are all strengths. But what about weaknesses? Well, someone can become aloof. Someone can be uncommitted, right? Why would you want to commit to something that's just trying to trick you? Someone can be suspicious. You can become an elitist. And all of this leads to becoming depressed and isolated. What does the good news sound like here? You have permission to question and challenge the status quo. The attitude towards this present stage is, honestly, this stage is tough. It's sometimes miserable, but at least it's more honest than the other two stages. That's what someone may be thinking in this stage. So if you're like, this is really hard, whatever stage I'm in, I don't know how to name it, but it's hard, I don't like it, but I know it's better than the other two, you might be in this stage. Then attitude towards tradition is a doubt in a corrupt or a damaging tradition. It's filled with doubt. So then, therefore, the attitude towards doubt is that doubt is a virtue to be cultivated. And in this case, faith is an obstacle to critical thinking. We must move beyond faith. All right, we're almost there. We've done simplicity, complexity, perplexity. Now let's talk about harmony. The perception, instead of being dualistic or pragmatic or, cynical, it's integral and holistic. It's bringing things together. And so the focus is on inclusion, bringing things in, and on transcendence, knowing there's something beyond what I know. The motive is about finding connection. It's about seeing things whole. It's about making a contribution. The key values are often being compassionate, seeking justice, and seeking the common good. The assumption is that we are all connected. We're part of a greater whole. How does this group see authority figures? Often as fallible people, imperfect people, people who make mistakes, as sinners like you and I. What is the us versus them? It's not good versus evil. It's not winning versus losing. It's not honest versus dishonest. It's wondering, how do we integrate this all into a bigger us? One song says it like this. It's not us versus them, it's us for them. Next slide. Life is a mysterious gift. Identity is about becoming interdependent, needing others in healthy ways. Belonging says, I'm seeking understanding, I'm seeking connection, I'm seeking the common good, even with my opponents and my enemies. So long as we're seeking common good together, we can all belong. In this framework, God is often seen or felt as loving presence, as creative wisdom, and God is known through experience and through metaphors. Right? The core question, what part can I play for the common good? Mistakes are seen as inevitable, as simply part of learning and growth. We will make them. Strengths, there's actually the integration of all those previous strengths with a greater depth and a wider circle of compassion. However, that also means that the weaknesses, you're susceptible in this stage to all the previous weaknesses. Because the idea is you're taking it all with you. The good news sounds like everything belongs, all are connected, and all life is sacred. The attitude towards the present stage is that this stage is just going to go back to the first stage at some point. It'll become another new simplicity, followed by a new complexity, and the growth process never ends. The attitude towards tradition is there's a faith and a doubt in an evolving tradition. The attitude towards doubt is that doubt is a necessary part of life, a portal from one stage to another. Faith is a humble, reverent openness to mystery that expresses itself in non-discriminatory love. You might say, I feel like I'm kind of at this stage here and this stage there. Maybe there's pieces of both, and of course we're all in flux, and so that may be, but I encourage you, I hope, I guess, that something somewhere helped you get some sense of where you might be, and maybe you were even able to guess, identifying where someone else in this church might be. It's helpful to be able to kind of name that, to get a sense of where someone might be. And if we're not kind of seeing things eye to eye or not so certain about certain things, it may be because we're at very different stages in this journey of faith. But I hope you were able to find one. One of the things that McLaren talks about when he talks about this stage of faith, these stages of faith, and that a lot of other teachers on these stages of faith talk about, is learning to, what they say, transcend and include. Meaning, when you find yourself entering into another stage, it's always going to be a temptation to overreact, to over-course correct from where you're coming from, to overreact against the previous stage. But real wisdom includes the past while growing from it. That's the idea of including and transcending. Bringing it with you, thanking it, finding what's good in it that still needs to be nourished, and allowing yourself space to grow beyond it. I think Richard Rohr gives a story about a real, super educated, liberal, elite Christian who attends an evangelical church once and will not sing any of the songs about Jesus because they're pulling on your emotions, they're too simple, they're lame, whatever this person is thinking. But on paper, they'd say, I believe in all those things. Yeah, I believe in Jesus and believe in all that. And in some ways, they're missing the ability to have a connection with God in that way. So how do you include and transcend? And I think this is important to note, because when Joshua becomes the next leader of Israel, it says this. I'm coming to a close, but it says this in Joshua 1:7 through 9. It says, "Be strong and very courageous." All right, so God is affirming the courageousness of Joshua and saying, you're going to need that. You're going to need that if you guys are going to go anywhere. But also, be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua is to be thoroughly aware of, thoroughly attuned to God's self-revelation in the past. He is to meditate on it, speak it. It should be on his lips always. Speak it to himself, speak it to the people. Yet he is not to be afraid of the unknown territory that comes next. He's to bring the past with him into a new, unknown future. Include and transcend. So he can always cling to those words of hope that your God will be with you wherever you go. So, wherever you are, whether you identify with one of these stages or think they're all a bit cuckoo, I simply want to encourage you that God is with you there and wherever you go. Let's pray. God who is with us, would you remind us in ways that we can hear and understand and perceive that we are not alone, that the future is not a scary place, because you are going with us into whatever it looks like, individually, collectively. We need not fear. Give us ears to hear the 2 voices of faith over the 10 of fear, that we may trust, that we may believe that something exceedingly good is waiting for us on the other side. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.